Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com, a free site, bettingangle.us, a free site. It is July the 8th, 2025. Let's talk boxing. But first, remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Folks, I'm surprised, very surprised, at the line in the Katie Taylor versus Amanda Serrano fight. Right? Katie Taylor is a plus 150 underdog. Now, let me make a few points here. Let me explain why I'm not making a prediction on this fight. Right? You understand that Amanda Serrano, as I make this video, has not figured out what to do with Katie Taylor's head. Right? Katie Taylor comes inside. Understand, Katie Taylor's head is not Katie Taylor's problem. It's Amanda Serrano's problem. Right? For the record, I consider Serrano as the superior fighter. I thought Serrano won the last fight, at a minimum. Right? At a minimum. I thought Katie Taylor lost the Chantel Cameron rematch. Right? Katie Taylor, for my taste, doesn't hit hard enough, but yet she's in the pocket. Right? She throws a lot of punches. I just don't believe the punches have enough sting on them for me to give them the same level of scoring that I give the punches thrown by opponents like Chantel Cameron. A fight in which, and I know there's a Katie Taylor contingent out there, a fight in which Cameron gets a knockdown and it's not called a knockdown and things like that. Katie Taylor, I understand the Serrano people are upset that Katie Taylor came inside, knows her head's a problem for Amanda Serrano, and still puts it in a position where the fighters are going to clash heads. Serrano got a cut. Even with the cut, I thought Serrano won the last match. Apparently many gamblers must too, since she's a minus 160 as a favorite. Understand, the fight's in New York City, but the first fight was in New York City. Let me make another point too, and it'll upset some people. Right? Life's unfair. For whatever reason, and I mean this, for whatever reason. Ray Leonard was loved and Marvin Hagler was not, even though it was Hagler's title on the line. Right? Katie Taylor is loved. Amanda Serrano is loved in New York City. The question is, who's loved more? Right? It's a bad visual. Katie's in there. Katie's deep in the pocket. Katie's letting her hands go. Katie, looks like she's giving it her all and stuff like that. Serrano, much bigger puncher. But she doesn't throw as many punches as Katie Taylor. Right? She's looking for openings. Unfortunately, you only have 2-minute rounds for this match. Right? The fighter who's able to sprint out the gate fast, throw a lot of punches, move away from you in the closing seconds of the round, might have done enough to win the round. If you hurt that fighter, the fighter only has to make it to the 2-minute mark for the bell to ring. This isn't a 3-minute round setup where, at the 2-minute mark, I still have to figure out how to survive another 60 seconds. Let me get back to the head thing. Right? We've seen elite fighters have problems with a guy's head and, of course, or an opponent's head. We're talking about women's boxing here. Right? And, of course, that opponent leverages it. Right? Mike Tyson, the first fight, felt that Evander was coming in and headbutting him. The second fight, Evander came inside. Tyson was frustrated, didn't feel that the referee was doing enough, started biting Evander's ear. Right? Timothy Bradley, Devin Alexander, Alexander looked befuddled on what to do with Bradley's head. Right? Bradley was able to get deep in the pocket. Bradley understood. His head was giving Alexander problems. So, of course, Bradley kept his head there. Right? So here you have that unique situation. And it's a unique situation where you have a head problem in this Katie Taylor-Serrano fight. You also have a fighter who's loved. I'm telling you, be careful in betting against those fighters. Right? You know, we can sit here and say, wow, that's unfair and stuff like that. Right? But you and I understand. Juan Manuel Marquez was not going to win a decision against Manny Pacquiao. Right? You know, it's unfair. That's fine. You're a gambler. You're interested in outcomes, not explanations. Right? At the end of the fight, you know, when they say, oh, gee, we're giving it to this other person, you know, you're out of money. Right? With Katie Taylor, she simply put is too popular, throws too much volume. Right? Has a body language that makes her look like an underdog. Right? In other words, you know, you see her, I thought Chantel Cameron clearly beat her in the rematch. But Katie looked like a victim, didn't she? Right? You know what? Me knocked the canvas. You know, me hit the canvas. You know, you saw the replay. You had the benefit of the replay at home. Right? They were wise enough to put that rematch in Katie Taylor's backyard. I understand. Here in New York City, it's not in Katie Taylor's backyard. Nor was the first fight. How did that end? Right? So I see these odds and I'm hesitant. Right? Who do I think's the better fighter? I think Amanda Serrano. Right? Do I think she knows how to get out of the way of Katie Taylor's head? I don't. Right? Let me just say, too, who's the more popular fighter? You know, they bring in judges from abroad. Right? I understand you're going to have a lot of New Yorkers there, particularly people who saw the second fight, where I thought Serrano clearly won that fight. Right? And, you know, they'll be rooting for Serrano. I'm just telling you, there are a lot of people who are going to be rooting for Katie Taylor. Let me say this. Ricky Hatton would travel across the Atlantic and would fight in New York City. The crowd would be in a Ricky Hatton crowd. Right? Let's just keep it real. New York is not far away enough from Europe to prevent Katie Taylor fans from crossing the Atlantic. Folks, this is the trilogy fight. Right? As I mentioned before, Juan Manuel Marquez figured out that he was never going to get a decision against Manny Pacquiao. He had to stop Pacquiao to win that last fight. Fight number 4, by the way. Right here, if Katie Taylor throws a lot of volume, if Amanda Serrano gets cut again, right, by an opponent who knows how to place her head, but who knows how to not throw her head so it's obvious, or if Amanda Serrano is so chagrined by the head being in the way that it throws off the rest of her game. Right? She decides, hey, I'm not going to lean in here. I'm going to move away. But without the lean, the power might not be there. You're going to have problems. I believe this fight is that rare fight that's too much of a wild card to bet on. Right? One man's opinion. Let's shift gears. You know, spend some time looking at some boxing film. And I saw a fight style that I realized could beat William Zepeda. Right? That fight style belongs to 175-pounder David Benavidez. Right? Benavidez comes in. He's somewhat parallel to you. His feet are closer together than Shakur Stevenson's. Right? The secret to Benavidez, one of them anyway, is the fact that Benavidez has a high punch radius. In other words, you're in front of him, but he can bend to the side, throw withering hooks to your left side. Then he can bend to the other side, throw withering hooks to your right side while maintaining his defense. Also, Benavidez has gears, right? He can make his hands blinding fast, right? So a guy like Zepeda, who is predictable, he's going to be in the pocket, right? He's going to be throwing a lot of punches. He's going to have his head tucked over on your right shoulder if you're standing right in front of him. You already know all that, right? A guy like Benavidez can break that cadence, right? You know, he can make a Zepeda have to change things because Benavidez, who stands really more upright than you realize, will have the guy walk in front of him. Then Benavidez is going to start bending and throwing shots from the side, hooks, and things like that. He'll go to Zepeda's body. He'll force Zepeda to come in at a different angle. Then Benavidez has different punches for different occasions. Now, Shakur Stevenson, by contrast, while Shakur has lightning fast hands, Shakur has a wide foot base. Right? Stevenson, it's something to keep an eye on. What happens when Zapeda crashes the body? Understand, when Stevenson's fighting a righty is going to lean their head on Stevenson's left shoulder. Stevenson knows that because the righty's head is leaning toward his left hand, he can get off straight lefts. In this fight, Zepeda is going to be leaning, since Zepeda is a southpaw, his head on Stevenson's right shoulder. Look at Zepeda highlights. Right? Zepeda's last two fights were against the lefty. Look at how Zapeda approached that. Right? There are times, by the way, where Tevin Farmer doesn't know what to do with Zepeda's volume. Right? Farmer leans back and Zepeda's throwing a bunch of volume, and Farmer understands that his body positioning is key. Well, understand, Farmer does not have the PR problems that Shakur Stevenson has. Right? Folks, I'll put it to you this way. Stevenson's damned if he does and damned if he doesn't. I don't believe Stevenson can stay in the pocket against Zepeda with a wide foot base. Right? I just don't believe he can. Understand, a wide foot base doesn't quite allow you to pull the kind of moves that Benavidez is pulling, because Benavidez with a shorter foot base, right? Benavidez's feet are not that wide apart. He's able on the fly to decide, oh, I'm going to go throw uppercuts. I'm going to go throw hooks to the guy's body. Then I'm going to shift over on this side, and I'm going to throw multiple hooks on this other side of the guy's body. With Stevenson, the problem with the side profile, the problem with the wide foot base, is that you simply don't have the maneuverability that you do if your feet aren't that wide apart. Right? You remember Adrian Broner. You remember him starting to get hit hard later in his career. You remember how wide his foot base was. Right? Now, Stevenson's PR problem comes from the Edwin De Los Santos fight. The fact that the crowd now views Stevenson, a guy with a lower knockout percentage than Ray Leonard at the end of Ray's career. Right? A guy with a sub 50% KO percentage. They view Stevenson as too defensive. Right? It has a lot to do not with Stevenson, but with the era we're in. Right? This isn't the Pernell Whitaker era where you're watching Whitaker, you're seeing the other guy miss him, and you're saying, oh, Pernell's in control of this round. Right? This generation of boxing fan asks a different question. They say, how many shots has Pernell actually landed in this round? Right? Understand, Pernell was so outraged by the scoring in the Oscar De La Hoya fight that he took out an ad in the LA Times, Oscar's hometown paper, saying, Oscar, you and I both know I won that fight. Watch that fight. Pernell's hardly throwing punches some rounds. He thought he won the fight. Today, that same fight, we would look at it and say, Pernell didn't throw enough punches. Right? Well, the problem with Stevenson is he's a defensive fighter in an offensive era. Judges don't have a lot to think about in terms of the Zepeda side of the ledger. You see Zepeda out there, he's more active, he's on his front foot, he's landing shots, he's throwing shots. You're a judge, you're thinking, okay, the superior volume is Zepeda. Right? Who landed more punches that round? Zepeda. Why? Because he threw 1.5 times the number of punches that Stevenson did. So Stevenson's going to have problems with that wide stance in the pocket. If Stevenson moves too much, he's going to look like he's running. The mistake Edwin De Los Santos made was De Los Santos didn't fully chase him. Zepeda's going to fully chase him. Right? So Stevenson is saying, hey, you know what? I'm going to stay in the pocket and I'm going to fight him. Right? Let me just say, a key part of that, you the boxing fan, need to look at it, will be, and I'm aware of the fact that Farmer knocks down Zepeda off a left hand, up top. Right? But if I'm Stevenson, my go-to punch is going to be my left hand. Stevenson's a southpaw. The left hand is his dominant hand. It's going to be a left hand to Zepeda's body. Right from the opening bell. Zepeda's going to be, since he's a southpaw, he's going to be over on Stevenson's right side. Right? So Stevenson, can't keep his dominant hand in the holster. Has to realize that Zepeda is going to be coming in completely on his right side. He has to throw that dominant hand to Zepeda's body. I mean, folks, it's just that simple. Then he has to move in that direction, away from Zepeda's left. Right? If he tries to dance around the ring, that's not Stevenson. Not only that, if he moves too much, people are going to boo him. They're going to say he's running. Right? Understand, boxing's an expectation game. Right? Let's say Stevenson moves as much as Pernell Whitaker did. Right? Makes Zepeda miss. Is the crowd going to appreciate that? Coming from Stevenson? They might not. Right? They might not. So, these two fights, just throwing it out there, because I made a premium video on the Stevenson fight, I'm not going to talk about betting strategy. But let's just say Stevenson's going to have to make some adjustments. Right? A wide stance won't work against William Zepeda. Let me say this too. Zepeda's a wicked body puncher. Right? As you can imagine, Zepeda himself is going to be throwing left hands to Stevenson's body. Right? Stevenson has to realize that in a shootout, if it's a shootout, without a knockout, he loses. Right? He's going to have to come in and figure out how to dampen Zepeda's volume, not have it be a shootout. Slow down Zepeda enough where it's clear that Stevenson is the dominant fighter. Right? I thought Floyd against Manny, I thought Floyd completely dampened Manny Pacquiao's volume. Right? Mayweather made a career out of beating one-handed fighters. Pacquiao, improved his right hand over time, but still against Mayweather, looked like a one-handed lefty, didn't he? Right? After that fight, the Pacquiao group started talking about how Pacquiao had a bad shoulder. That's how lopsided that fight was. Right? The same way Floyd made Manny look like he was throwing far less punches than Manny threw against, let's say, Oscar De La Hoya. For Stevenson to win, he's gonna have to find a way to dampen Zepeda's volume or to knock down Zepeda a few times. Do this the Canelo way. Right? Come out, look dominant, drop the other guy, so we say, oh, Stevenson is the superior talent. And then not get hurt yourself, stay upright, be competitive, land the plane, win the decision. But without a knockdown, without dampening Zepeda's volume, how's Stevenson going to do it? I don't think moving away on his back foot is going to work. This is a style nightmare for Stevenson. Anyway, those are my thoughts. I'm not saying Zepeda's unbeatable, by the way. Right? I think Zepeda could be severely tested by some of the other people out there, including folks at 135. Right? But understand, this is a fight where it's Zepeda who's better defensively than you think. Look at his hands. He's not just in there blindly throwing. No, this is a guy who has his hands up. Right? Zepeda might not respect Stevenson's power enough to measure himself. Right? And the problem with the clash of styles is by the start of round 5, we're going to know who has the upper hand, aren't we? Right? Either Zepeda comes out and Stevenson can't keep up, or Stevenson comes out and is so crisp, right, with right hooks and stuff like that, with left hands to the body, right, the key punch, in my opinion, for him, that Zepeda has to move on to plan B and plan C, right? Can't be hyper aggressive. We're going to find that out in the first third of the fight. By the start of the 5th round, you're going to know who has the upper hand. Those are my thoughts. Let me hear yours in the comment section of this YouTube video. Let me invite Katie Taylor fans to tell us why you feel Taylor is the better fighter than either Chantel Cameron or Amanda Serrano. Right? Folks, I'm seeing a lot of volume. I'm seeing a lot of slaps. It's not that Katie Taylor is that defensively blessed. Parts of her fight inevitably end up in shootouts. Right? Of all the people in women's boxing, I'll say she seems to be the person who benefits the most from the 2-minute rounds. I look forward to your comments. Thanks for stopping by.